The sun shines brightly through the tall windows of the wedding hall. Minu stands at the altar. His black tuxedo fits perfectly. His hands are folded calmly behind his back. His face expresses nothing but a slight, social smile. From the outside, he looks like a patient groom. In reality, he is mentally calculating the upcoming deal with his Chinese partners. The wedding is just an item on his to-do list. Festive music plays. All the guests stand and turn around. Iris appears at the end of the aisle. She's as beautiful as a picture from a magazine. She's wearing a white dress, her makeup and hair perfectly done. She smiles and her eyes sparkle. She walks slowly toward Min, looking at him with tenderness. She rehearsed this tenderness for 2 hours this morning in front of the mirror. He extends his hand to her. Her white-gloved fingers rest coolly on his palm. They turn to face the priest. They recite the standard vows. Their voices are even, confident. Minu slips a simple gold ring onto her finger. It glitters, but offers no warmth. Iris does the same. Her ring is heavy and cold. They kiss. It's light, quick, for the photos. The guests applaud. Minu's parents, stern and elegant, look on with approval. Iris's mother, a dark-skinned woman in a bright blue dress, cries with joy. She believes in this fairy tale. They play all day. Minu gently holds Iris by the waist as they dance. She laughs at his jokes, which he tells without emotion. They cut a huge cake and feed each other a piece. Their movements are as precise as actors. They attract admiring glances. What a beautiful couple, the guests whisper. No one notices how Minu's gaze turns blank as he looks over the heads. No one notices how Iris's smile momentarily fades as she turns away. Drives them to the penthouse. The driver silently opens the door. They ascend in the elevator. The space around them is filled with silence. The hubbub of the wedding is far below. The door to their new apartment opens silently. Inside, it smells of fresh paint and new things. A spacious living room. Expensive, minimalist furniture, huge panoramic windows overlooking the city at night. Everything sparkles and shines. There's not a single personal item, not a single photograph. It feels like an expensive hotel, not a home. Iris kicks off her high heels. She stands barefoot on the cold, polished concrete floor. Her shoulders drop an inch, as if an invisible weight has been lifted. Minu walks up to the bar. He takes off his jacket and hangs it over the back of a chair. Without a word, he pours a glass of red wine. He takes the first sip. He looks out at the city lights beyond the glass. Big, Iris says, her voice echoing in the empty space. Minu nods without turning around. Yes, enough. She picks up her small purse and the suitcase the delivery service has already placed against the wall. I'll go. Unpack. Okay, he answers, still evenly. She walks down the long hallway toward the bedrooms. There are 2. She chooses the one further down. The door closes behind her with a soft click. Minu is left alone. He finishes his wine and pours himself another. The phone rings. He picks it up and his voice instantly becomes harsh and businesslike. Speak. An hour passes. Minu has already swapped his tuxedo for black trousers and a simple dark t-shirt. He's sitting on the couch, scrolling through a report on his tablet. The wine is almost finished. The door in the hallway opens. Iris appears. She's wearing a luxurious silk robe. Her hair is pulled back into a high bun. Her face is still flawless. Eyeliner, eyeshadow, lipstick. I'll go wash my face, she says quietly. He just looks up from the screen and nods again. She enters the shared bathroom. The door doesn't close tightly. Minu hears the sound of running water, the clinking of glass jars. He puts down his tablet, picks up a glass, and goes to the window. Waits. He doesn't know what he's waiting for. Perhaps just the end of this long day. The water stops flowing. Silence falls. Then a soft noise again, as if something is being put back in place. The door opens. Minu turns away from the window and looks up. He freezes. The glass in his hand doesn't shake, but his fingers tighten a little. An unfamiliar woman stands before him. Her features are softer, simpler. Her skin is several shades lighter than he remembered. Small freckles on the bridge of her nose and cheeks, previously carefully concealed. Without eyeliner, her eyes appear smaller, closer together. Her eyebrows are lighter and more sparse. She is still beautiful, but it is a different kind of beauty, simpler, more real, and utterly alien. He can't hide his immediate reaction. His eyes widen slightly. A slight, barely perceptible shock is reflected on his usually stony face. Iris sees it. She sees him looking at her as if she were a ghost. She stops 2 steps away from him, her shoulders tense. She takes a deep breath, as if preparing to jump from a height. Mina, she says quietly, but clearly, we need to talk. He doesn't answer. He just looks. His gaze glides over her face, as if searching for familiar features beneath this new, unexpected layer of reality. He'd seen this face just a second ago in the bathroom, on the screen of his switched-off tablet, in the dark window, everywhere but here, in front of him. Iris doesn't look away. She stands straight, submitting herself to this silent examination. Her hands, missing their usual manicure, which she'd scrubbed off with acetone, are clenched into fists at the seams of her robe. "I'm not who I seemed," she finally says. Her voice is even, without a tremor, but it lacks its former sweet melody. It's lower, a little husky. Minu takes a slow sip of wine, buying himself a second to clear his thoughts, which had momentarily scattered. He sets the glass down on the bar. The sound of glass hitting stone is too loud in the silence. "It's obvious," he says. His voice is neutral, but inside, everything clenches. He's been deceived. He, a man who built a career on the ability to spot deception a mile away. The irony of the situation is as sharp as a blade. She sees his jaw tense. This man is more than just a frustrated suitor. He's someone people whisper about with apprehension. His anger, quiet, chilling, could be dangerous, but it's too late to back down now. "My name isn't Iris. Well, that's my middle name. My name is Chung-hee. Kim Chung-hee." She pauses, as if giving him time to process. "I'm half Korean. On my dad's side. My mom, you saw her at the wedding. She's from Chicago." Minu is silent. He waits for her to continue. His fingers slowly drum on the counter. "The real Iris, the perfect Iris, and I went to school together. At an international school. Then at university. She's my best friend. Rich, beautiful, from that proper family you probably thought I came from." Chung-hee says all this calmly, like a report. 3 months ago, we were sitting at her house, watching some stupid show about arranged marriages, and she said that a man like you would never look at a girl like me, that my background, my appearance without a ton of makeup, that it's not in your world. The corner of her lips twitches slightly, but it's not a smile. She said I couldn't even interest your most humble bodyguard, let alone you, that it was impossible. We made a bet on that very bag she bought in Paris, and was so proud of, that I could get Kang Mina himself, the most eligible and unattainable bachelor, to propose to me. She exhales. Now it's all said. A weight has been lifted. She watches his face, trying to detect anger, contempt. "Your habits, your roots, your parents, their expectations. I created the perfect image. Iris, flawless, educated, with impeccable manners and the right, exotic, but not too exotic, looks. I spent hours practicing my smile, my laugh, my walk. I knew what charity your mother supported and volunteered there. I accidentally ended up at the reception you were at. I said what you wanted to hear. I showed you what you wanted to see." She looks at her simple, clean nails. "It was a game, a very complicated and very expensive game. This robe, this dress, these etiquette lessons, all with the money I borrowed to play this role. To win that stupid bag." She shakes her head, a few dark strands escaping her bun. "And tonight, the game is over, and I've lost, for real." She finally looks away from him and towards her room, where a small suitcase lies. "I won't ask for anything. No money, no help. I'll just leave. Tell everyone I couldn't handle the pressure, that I went crazy, whatever. You'll easily find a way to annul this marriage. And I'll get my old life back. And I'll give that damn bag to Chung-hee. She won. Really, she won." Silence fills the room again. The hum of the city outside the window seems distant, like the sound of the sea. Minu steps away from the counter. He approaches her, not too close, just an arm's length away. His gaze is still analytical, but there's something else in it now. Not anger, more like understanding. A cynical, cold understanding. "You did a tremendous job," he says finally. His voice is almost respectful. "You ran an entire operation. You took risks. You invested resources. Knowing who I am, it's impressive." Chung-hee looks at him with confusion, expecting a blow. "I have a confession for you too, Kim Chung-hee," he says, using her real name for the first time. "I didn't marry you because I was in love with Iris. I married you because my parents, especially my mother, drove me to the brink with their innuendos, home, and demands for more blood. They needed a beautiful, presentable daughter-in-law to show off, to close the book. Iris was the perfect candidate. She had no influential family here to interfere. She was beautiful, smart, and manageable, I thought. This marriage is a business deal for me. A showcase." He takes a step back, giving her space. "So your deception, it changes little in the essence of the agreement. My parents still need a daughter-in-law. I still need this display case." He looks at her real face, studying it with a new practical perspective. "The question now is different. Are you ready to continue playing? But now knowing what I know, and for a different price." The words hung in the air, heavy and clear, like contractual clauses. The silence that followed was different. Not awkward, but rich, thick, with unspoken thoughts and quick calculations. Chung-hee stared at him, trying to figure out the trick. Her brain, just a moment ago, ready to flee or explode in rage, was now frantically processing new information. He didn't love her. He was using her. No, he was using the image she'd created, and she was using it to win an argument. It was a cynical, perfect symmetry. She exhaled slowly, and the tension in her shoulders eased slightly. The fear receded, giving way to an icy, sober clarity. She nodded, unable to speak for now. Minu watched her. He saw a flash of recognition in her eyes, then an assessment. He appreciated it. He appreciated the lack of hysteria, tears, and excuses. She was a chess player, caught in an unexpected, but still a game, and she adjusted quickly. "My parents," he began again, in the voice he used when conducting business negotiations, "have already introduced you to their relatives. Social media, the press, you've become a fact. Your sudden disappearance will create unnecessary questions. A scandal. I don't need that." He paused, letting her know that he was talking about her interests as well. "You too, judging by your story, your duty, and your friend, Chung-hee." He said the name with a slight, barely perceptible hint of irony. "If you disappear, she'll ask questions, maybe make a fuss, or worse, feel sorry for you. Is that what you want?" Chung-hee shook her head sharply. "No." Humiliate herself in front of Chung-hee, who already looked down on her slightly, even as a friend? Admit it was all a lie? That was worse than staying here. "So, here's the proposal." Minu folded his arms across his chest. "You stay. You act as my wife in a public. You entertain, attend events, and please my parents. The rest of the time, you're free. This is your home, or rather, our shared showcase. You can do whatever you want, as long as it doesn't damage your reputation." He glanced around the empty penthouse. "I'll provide you with everything you need. Clothes, money, a car. You'll pay off your debts. What's more, I'll open an account for you, for your services. This will be your salary. The amount will be decent." Chung-hee listened, her internal accounting already running its course. The debt, the apartment she rented, the mother she helped. For Chung-hee, the bag was just a symbol, the last straw. The reality was far more prosaic and difficult. His offer wasn't just a way out of the impasse. It was an elevator from the life where she constantly counted money to another, full of illusory but material security. "What in return?" she asked quietly. "Besides playing the happy wife? In return, your presence, your silence, and your absolute loyalty in public. You don't discuss my affairs. You don't ask unnecessary questions about what I do. You don't cause scandals. You don't show up where you shouldn't, with whom you shouldn't. Our private life ends at the threshold of this house. Or rather, it doesn't exist at all." He looked straight at her, and there was steel in his gaze. "This is a business partnership, Kim Chung-hee. Clear, mutually beneficial, with a specific term, say, a year. By that time, the commotion will die down. Your parents will calm down. Then we'll divorce quietly and civilly, citing irreconcilable differences. You'll gain financial independence. I'll gain peace from family pressure. Everyone will remain as they are." He didn't ask, "Do you agree?" He stated the conditions. Chung-hee stared at the floor, at the cold, shiny concrete. She thought about her tiny studio, the smell of fried noodles from the apartment next door, the constant feeling of running in circles. She thought about her mother, who had cried tears of joy today. When she saw her settled, she thought about how tired she was. She raised her head and met his gaze. "Separate rooms," she said, not as a request, but as a condition. "Of course," he nodded. "I will not. I have other ways to deal with such matters." This didn't make her happy, but it did calm her down. The boundaries had been set. "And I sometimes get to see my mom. Or my friends, for real, within reason. Let me know if you're planning any meetings here. I'll make sure I'm not there." She nodded. Then slowly, as if sealing an invisible document, she extended her hand. Minu looked at her outstretched palm, stared for a moment, and then took it. His hand was large, dry, and very strong. Hers was narrow and cold. The handshake was firm, short, and utterly devoid of warmth. The agreement was concluded. He let go of her hand and turned back to the window, to his glass, making it clear that the conversation was over. Chung-hee stood there for a moment longer, then turned and walked toward her room. She turned around at the threshold. "Tomorrow," she said, "I'll need makeup, different foundation, and skincare. To look like Iris." Minwoo nodded without turning around. "Leave the list. Soyeon will handle it. My assistant." She nodded in response, though he couldn't see it, and closed the door behind her. Not with a key, just closed. Minu was left alone. He finished his wine. There was no anger or disappointment on his face. There was a slight, almost professional satisfaction. The unexpected obstacle had been eliminated. The situation was under control. The plan had been adjusted and was proceeding. He placed the glass in the sink and went to his office. The work night was just beginning. Outside her door, Chung-hee leaned against the wall and closed her eyes. A storm of shame, relief, and a strange emptiness raged in her chest. She'd won the bet and lost herself, but now she had a new contract, a new role, and a year to figure out what to do next. She took a deep breath and pushed herself off the wall. First thing, make a makeup list. Tomorrow, Iris would come alive again. And Kim Chung-hee, she had to learn to live in the shadow of her own illusion. The next morning, organizing the space begins. Minwoo is already in the office when Chung-hee emerges from her room. She's wearing simple sweatpants and a t-shirt, no makeup. They meet eyes in the hallway and silently go their separate ways. Minwoo calls his assistant, So-yeon, to the penthouse. She appears an hour later, a trim woman in a formal suit holding a tablet. She doesn't show the slightest surprise at seeing Chung-hee in her natural state. So-yeon is a professional. Minwoo gives her instructions in his office. Chung-hee hears snatches of them through the door. Furniture purchases, private quarters, separate entrance to the dressing room. Then So-yeon comes to Chung-hee. Miss Kang, she addresses her without a hint of irony. I need to understand your needs so I can furnish your portion of the residence. Chung-hee slowly walks around her territory, a bedroom overlooking the park, an adjoining empty room, her own bathroom, a small walk-in closet. Everything is sterile and impersonal. I need a big table by the window, says Chung-hee, and shelves, lots of shelves, a chair with good lighting. And here, she points to the empty room, we need an easel and art supplies, paper, paints, charcoal. So-yeon quickly takes notes on her tablet, not asking unnecessary questions. Also, adds Chung-hee, I'll make a list of cosmetics and personal care products, and clothes, every day, and, for going out, send me the lists. So-yeon nods. Everything will be delivered by this evening. The penthouse by lunchtime. They bring and assemble furniture for Chung-hee. A minimalist light wood desk, a deep armchair, and bookcases. An easel, file drawers, and shelving are brought into the next room. Everything is quick and silent. Minwoo doesn't leave his office at this time. He's on the phone. The boundary between his wing and hers is strictly maintained. By evening, her personal apartment is taking shape. It's not yet a home, but it's already a workspace, her space. She arranges the few personal belongings she brought in a suitcase, a couple of books, an old photograph of her mother, a set of brushes in a tin box. She doesn't close the door to the hallway. The door to his wing is always closed. Chung-hee wakes to an unfamiliar silence, not from the sounds of the city, muffled by the triple-glazed windows, but from the silence within, from the realization that she is alone in a huge room, at the center of an alien, imaginary life. She puts on her robe and goes out into the hallway. Minwoo stands in the kitchen, behind the island. He's already dressed, dark pants, a gray turtleneck. He stirs his coffee, looking at his tablet with the morning reports. A second clean coffee set, a cup, saucer, and spoon, lies on the table nearby. He looks up at her, nods, and returns to the screen. Study it. Okay, she replies quietly, the first conversation of the day, like a director assessing an actor before going on stage. Your look, Iris. It must be flawless. From now on, that's your uniform. She nods. Her insides clench. Today she needs to put on the mask again, the one under which he's already seen her true face. This will be harder. I'll get ready, she says, taking her cup to go to her room. And, Chung-hee? He stops her. She turns around. Breakfast. It'll be served at 8. If you need anything special, tell So-yeon. Not, what would you like, but tell So-yeon. The line is drawn clearly again. She nods and leaves. By 11 a.m., the transformation is complete. Chung-hee is wearing a light pastel dress, her hair styled in soft waves. Her makeup, the same sophisticated, flawless look that once again conceals her freckles and transforms. He's wearing a light jacket and dark trousers, looking effortlessly elegant. His gaze catches Chung-hee's, and a momentary glimmer of cool approval flashes in his eyes. The product matches the packaging. He approaches, and his hand falls lightly, naturally on her waist. Her body tenses for a moment, then relaxes, adjusting to the gesture. She turns her face to him and practices a smile, happy, a little shy. He returns the smile, but his gaze softens, becoming loving. It's a masterful trick. The interview begins. The journalist asks the predictable questions, how they met, first impressions, the most romantic moment. Minwoo takes the initiative. He tells a fictitious story about meeting at a charity event, about how he was captivated by her intelligence and kindness. His voice is warm and interested. Chung-hee plays her part. She adds the details she and So-yeon had come up with that morning. I was so confused when I saw him. She looks down, feigning sweet embarrassment. Her laughter sounds easy and natural. She finds herself thinking that this game is even easier now than before, because now they both know the rules. The photographer asks them to strike natural poses. They sit on the couch, his arm behind her back. They stand by the window. He looks at her, and she smiles, looking into the camera. They pretend to whisper and laugh. Their bodies touch at precisely measured, safe points. A hand on the shoulder, a brush of shoulders, a brief intertwining of fingers for the shot. Each touch is calculated and devoid of warmth, yet from the outside it appears tender. "You are so perfect for each other," the journalist sighs admiringly. Minwoo hugs Chung-hee a little tighter, pulling her closer. "Yes," he says, looking into her eyes with perfectly played tenderness. "I'm very lucky." Chung-hee feels a shiver run down her spine, not from his touch, but from the perfection of the lie. She rests her head on his shoulder, closing her eyes against the flashes, and smiles as if this is the happiest moment of her life. The hour ends. The guests leave, thanking them for the warm welcome. The door closes. Instantly, as if a switch had been flipped, Minu pulls away. His smile fades. He adjusts the cuff of his jacket. "Well done," he says. "Now get dressed for dinner. Your parents will be here in 40 minutes. He turns and walks into his office without looking back. Chung-hee is left alone in the living room, still brightly lit by the spotlights. A smile freezes on her face, slowly fading, leaving behind only an empty, tired mask. She takes off her high heels and walks barefoot to her room to trade one role for another. At precisely 1:30 p.m., the intercom rang. Minwoo's parents weren't used to being late. Chung-hee, wearing a discreet cream turtleneck, stood next to Minwoo in the hallway. He placed his hand on the small of her back, a light, guiding touch. His parents enter. His father, Kang Dae-jun, is an elderly replica of Minwoo, with the same impassive face, but with gray hair at the temples. His mother, Kang Sumi, is an elegant, slender woman in an expensive, neutral-colored suit. Her gaze instantly takes in Chung-hee, the interior, the atmosphere. "Mom! Dad," Minwoo says, stepping forward. His tone is respectful but lacking in warmth. He nudges Chung-hee slightly. "Hello." Chung-hee bows, careful not to let her bow go too deep, but not too light either. She'd practiced this with Soyeon. "Well, finally," Sumi says, taking off her coat and handing it to Min. She approaches Chung-hee, takes her hands, and looks her straight in the eyes. Her smile is perfect, but it doesn't reach her eyes. "We've been looking forward to this informal meeting." Lunch is served in the dining room. A chef hired for the day prepares exquisite Korean dishes. Conversation flows slowly and heavily. "Are you settling in well, daughter?" Sumi asks, tasting the soup. "Yes, thank you. Minwoo took care of everything," Chung-hee replies, smiling at her husband. He nods. "This area is considered safe," her father interjects. "But still, you shouldn't be out walking alone late at night." "I understand," Chung-hee nods. There's an awkward pause. Sumi glances at her son. "What about plans? Have you thought about a sequel?" Minu's expression doesn't change. "Mom, we just got married. Give us time to get used to each other." "Getting used to it?" Sumi smiled thinly. "You didn't marry for convenience, did you? When there are feelings, such issues are resolved naturally." Chung-hee feels a cold sweat break out under her dress. She lowers her eyes to her plate. "There are feelings," Minwoo says calmly. His hand covers Chung-hee's under the table. His touch is firm, impersonal, reassuring only as a signal. "Hold on, but we want to do this right. Without rushing." He says this with such confidence that Sumi only sighs. Of course! Just know, daughter." She looks at Chung-hee again. "Our lineage must continue. That is your primary responsibility." Chung-hee feels like her own mask is about to crack. She simply nods, unable to utter a word. Lunch drags on for another hour. The parents leave, leaving behind an atmosphere of quiet oppression and Sumi's expensive perfume mingling with the smell of food. When the door closes, Minwoo, without a word, retreats to her office. Chung-hee is left alone in the living room, haunted by the ghost of the just-ended performance. She goes to her new office. She sits down at her desk and looks at her phone. A message from her friend Chung-hee has been flashing on the screen for hours. "Well, how did it go? Where's my bag, winner?" Chung-hee picks up the phone. Her fingers hover over the screen. She takes a deep breath and dials the number. The phone picks up on the first ring. "Iris! Finally! I'm dying of curiosity. Well, was he shocked? Tell me everything." Her friend's voice is clear, full of anticipation, of a funny story. Chung-hee closes her eyes. "Everything went as it should," she says in a flat, tired voice. "And he saw the real you and, what, fainted? Angry? Oh, I can picture his face. He was surprised, but everything's fine." Chung-hee looks out the window at the gray city. "Normal? What does that mean? You won the bet. You married him. You should be celebrating. There's a hint of disappointment in her friend's voice at the lack of drama. I won, yes, Chung-hee says, the words like ash on her tongue. The bag is yours. I'll hand it over soon. Unbelievable! The delight in her friend's voice was genuine again. You pulled it off. Kang Min himself. So he finally accepted you. Just like that? This question is a knife. Like this, without a mask. You're now married to the most eligible bachelor in town. Even just like that. Unexpected. Yes, Chung-hee says shortly. Thank you. Okay, I won't distract the newlyweds, her friend giggles. Get comfortable. Bye. Chung-hee sets her phone down on the table. She doesn't feel like a winner. She feels like a product that's been inspected and then left on the shelf for further, purely decorative use. She won the bet only to lose herself, and now she must hand over that very bag, the symbol of this foolish, costly victory. The following days enter into a rigid, silent rhythm. Morning, Minwoo leaves before Chung-hee comes out for breakfast. Only traces remain in the kitchen. A clean cup in the sink, a fresh copy of a financial newspaper on the table. Occasionally, she hears the elevator door slam. She spends the morning alone, mastering a new painting technique ordered from Soyeon's list. Reading, wandering aimlessly through the deserted rooms. The penthouse is beautiful, quiet, and dead. There's not a speck of dust, not an untidy object, not a hint of life. It's a perfect picture, in which she is the only non-static element. Sometimes Soyeon comes by. She brings folders of invitations to sort, lists of charity events. She discusses wardrobe for upcoming events with Chung-hee. Their conversation is dry and efficient. Daytime, Chung-hee tries to occupy herself. She starts writing an email to her mother, but deletes it, unsure what to say. I'm fine. Sounds like a mockery. I live in a gilded cage is too frank and cruel. In the end, she sends a short, I'm fine, Mom. How are you? And feels like a traitor. Sometimes she goes out, accompanied by a silent driver sent by Minu. She strolls through expensive boutique districts, pretending to shop. Everyone understands that she is Kan's wife and treats her with obsequious politeness. She feels their gazes on her, curious, appraising. That same iris. Evening, Minu returns, usually late. He goes straight to his office or home gym. Sometimes they cross paths in the kitchen, where she pours herself some water, and he makes a protein shake. How's your day? He sometimes asks out of politeness. Fine. And you? Busy. The conversation ends here. He nods and leaves. She returns to her room. They exist in the same space, like two islands in the same ocean, separated by the impassable waters of silence and unspoken agreement. His world is numbers, phone calls, quiet conversations behind closed doors, the meaning of which she doesn't try to understand. Her world is silence, a canvas, the anticipation of their next appearance in public, where they will once again have to put on masks and pretend to love. Chung-hee decides to take a walk away from the usual routes. She asks the driver to take her to an old neighborhood full of small cafes and art shops. She just wants to wander alone, aimlessly. The driver, instructed to keep an eye on her, parks the car, and follows her at a respectful distance. She goes into an antique shop, looks at old illustrated magazines, then she leaves and continues down a narrow street. And then she sees him. Minu stands next to a black SUV, half turned toward her. He's not wearing a jacket, but a simple dark sweater and a leather jacket. But it's not the clothes. His posture, his facial expression, they're different. He's talking to two heavy-set men. His face isn't a mask of politeness or indifference. It's stony, focused. His gaze is hard, piercing. He speaks softly, but his gestures are sharp, precise. One of the men says something, and Minu slowly turns his head toward him. He doesn't raise his voice, but his quiet, icy remark causes the man to take a step back and nod quickly. Chung-hee pauses in the shadows of the entrance. She sees one of the men hand Minwoo a small metal briefcase. Minwoo takes it without checking it and hands it to the driver standing next to him. His movements are confident, familiar. At that moment, he looks up. His eyes sweep across the street and briefly catch her figure in the depths of the entrance. She sees something flash in his gaze for a split second. Not surprise, but a quick, cold calculation. He recognizes her. He doesn't show it. He doesn't nod. He doesn't smile. He just slowly, very deliberately, looks away, as if she's not there. He continues the conversation, as if nothing happened, but now his back tenses a little more. Chung-hee retreats deeper into the entryway. Her heart is pounding somewhere in her throat. She'd only seen him like this out of the corner of her eye when he was talking on the phone, but seeing it in person was something else entirely. This wasn't a businessman negotiating. This was a different man, a predator. And that look, that cold, assessing gaze he slid over her, was more terrifying than any rage. She turns and quickly, almost running, crying, walks back to the car. The driver, sensing her panic, silently opens the door. That evening, Minwoo returns home as usual. He doesn't show anything to his food. He doesn't mention what he saw again, and she doesn't ask. Their conversations over meals are rituals. They discuss the weather. They remark on how well the chef cooked the fish. They debate whether they should change the curtains in the living room because the sun is too bright in the mornings. These are empty, safe phrases that fill the silence and create the illusion of communication. "It's going to rain tomorrow," Minwoo says, checking something on her phone. "Yeah, I saw the forecast. It's good we're not going anywhere." A pause. The sound of appliances. Soyeon sent a winter garden furniture catalog. "We need to pick something out." "Okay, I'll take a look. There are orchids in there. Do you like orchids?" "Yes, they're beautiful." "Then let's order orchids." The conversation dries up. They finish their meal in silence. Chung-hee thinks about how he looked at that man today, how he looked at her in the shadows of the entrance, and how now he asks her opinion on orchids. It's surreal. Several days pass. One evening, Minu doesn't go into his office after dinner. He puts down his napkin and looks at her. "The day after tomorrow evening, I'm having a reception here. Important partners with their families. They're not my parents' social acquaintances. They're business partners. And their wives aren't just wives. Many of them manage family foundations, charities, and public relations themselves. They're observant and cynical." He looks at her directly, assessing her. They need more than just a pretty picture. They need a sign of stability, confidence. That you're not just some random girl, but part of a system. You have to be the perfect hostess. Not just smile. You have to make small talk, guide the conversation, make sure the guests don't get bored. You have to show that this house is yours, that you're the rightful hostess here, not a guest, and that there's an understanding between us. He says this without emotion, as if it were a tactical matter. "This is the first real test of our agreement, Kim Chung-hee. Before, there were the parents and the press. That was easy. These people are more difficult. If you can handle it, it will make my life much easier and strengthen our position." She hears his words not as a personal request, but as an investment. He's invested resources in her, and now he expects a return. For the first time, he speaks to her not as a burden or decoration, but as a potential asset. "What exactly do I need to do?" she asks, her voice as businesslike as his. "Soyeon will give you a profile of the key guests, their interests, their families, potential talking points. You must memorize this. Your attire must be impeccable, but not provocative. Understated luxury. You will be by my side when we welcome guests. You will know who to talk to and what to talk about. If one of the wives tries to ask a tricky question, gently retort and change the subject. Your task is to create an atmosphere of impeccable, calm well-being. This is the best advertisement for my reliability as a partner." Chung-hee nods slowly. Something inside her clicks. The fear recedes. This is difficult. This is a challenge. But for the first time in weeks, this is a real challenge, not just putting on a dress and smiling. This is work that requires intelligence, preparation, and skill, the very skills she used to catch him. "I can handle it," she says, and there's a confidence in her voice he's never heard from her before. Minwoo looks at her for a few seconds, then nods. A hint of respect appears in his gaze. "Good. Start preparing. Soyeon will bring the dossier tomorrow morning." He gets up and leaves. Chung-hee sits at the table, but no longer feels like a useless piece of decor. She has a mission, and for the first time since their wedding, she feels like she can be more than just a problem or a picture, but something of value in his world. It's the evening of the reception. Chung-hee is wearing a simple navy blue dress that flatters her figure without being too obvious. Her makeup is flawless, and her hair is adorned with just a small sapphire clip that matches the color of her dress. She breathes evenly, repeating names and key facts in her head. The doors open, and the first guests emerge. Minwoo stands next to her, his hand resting on the small of her back. The first greetings are exchanged, smiles exchanged. Chung-hee feels the wives' appraising glances on her, quick and penetrating. She begins working. She notices a pearl necklace with her Chinese partner's wife, Mrs. Lee, and recalls her interest in jewelry history from her file. "It's a beautiful example of Ming Dynasty art, isn't it?" Chung-hee softly remarks. Mrs. Lee perks up, and a conversation ensues. She starts talking to her bored Japanese partner about a recent exhibition of Japanese prints in the city. His face brightens. Minwoo, who's been engaged in difficult negotiations with this man, gives her a brief, approving glance. She subtly steers conversations, tops up the glass, and makes light, non-prickly jokes. She remembers who has children and asks about their progress. She knows who's into golf and asks the right questions. Her laughter sounds natural. Her attention seems genuine. Minu watches. He sees how the initially tense young woman gradually relaxes and begins to control the atmosphere. She doesn't simply repeat memorized facts. She improvises, connects themes, creating a sense of ease and comfort. The guests are clearly charmed. The wives, initially skeptical, now nod approvingly. The business partners look at Minu with new respect. If he has a wife like that, he must be a solid, reliable person. At the end of the evening, as the guests begin to leave, many thank her personally. It was such a pleasure talking with you. You're a wonderful hostess. When the door closes behind the last guest, silence reigns in the house. Minu takes off his jacket. He looks at her, standing in the middle of the room. His usual mask cracks. There's no smile in his eyes, but a deep, silent assessment. He nods, once, clearly. You've exceeded expectations, he says, a hint of something close to professional admiration in his voice. Thank you. For Chungha, those two words mean more than any compliment. She smiles wearily, and this time it's almost genuine. I was just doing what we agreed on. 2 days after the reception, returning in the evening, Minwoo places a small black velvet box on the kitchen island in front of Chung-hee. This is for you, he says simply, without looking at her, pouring himself some water. Chung-hee looks at the box, then at him. She opens it. Inside, on a soft cushion, are earrings, subtle yet flawless. Each one is a single pear-shaped sapphire, framed by a delicate white gold band. They are very expensive and utterly impersonal for the successful execution of the event, he explains, as if giving a report. It's an investment in your image. These things are expected. You'll be noticed now. He's telling the truth. This isn't a gift from a man to a woman. It's a bonus from a boss to a valuable employee. Payment for a service. Nevertheless, the earrings are beautiful. Chung-hee picks one up and holds it up to the light. The stone is cool and deep. Thank you, she says. They're very beautiful. Wear them to your mother's next charity event. She'll appreciate it. He finishes the water and puts the glass in the sink. And Chung-hee, he adds, already leaving, your account. I've topped it up, just like we agreed. He goes into the office. Chung-hee is left holding the box. She feels a strange heaviness in her chest. She got what she wanted, recognition of her usefulness, money, an expensive accessory, all according to the agreement. Why does this feel so hollow? She closes the box and takes it to her room. Tomorrow she'll check the bill, and she'll put the earrings on when she needs to. She doesn't tell him anything. Simply cancels her morning meeting with the designer through So-yeon and stays in her room. She feels weak and chilly. By evening, the fever becomes noticeable. Minu returns, and not finding her at dinner, goes to her room. He sees her in bed, her face flushed and her eyes clouded. You're sick, he states, standing in the doorway. Not bad. Just a cold, she replies hoarsely. He doesn't leave. He looks at her for a second, then leaves. She hears him talking on the phone in the hallway. Yes, right now, and everything you need. 40 minutes later, not their usual doctor appears in the penthouse, but an elderly, stern-looking woman carrying a briefcase. She's the Kang family's personal physician. She examines Young-hee, takes her temperature, and listens to her lungs. It's a bad case of the flu, she tells Min, who's standing in the doorway, arms folded. She needs rest and medication. We need to keep an eye on her to make sure there are no complications. The doctor leaves the medications, gives instructions, and leaves. Chung-hee expects Min-woo to retreat to her wing or leave, but he doesn't. He cancels his evening calls. He doesn't approach her, but remains in the living room between their rooms. He orders broth and tea. Later, when she's half asleep and hears his footsteps, he peeks into the room. Do you need anything? Water? Medicine? No, I have everything, she mutters. If anything, knock, he says, and goes out again. At night, her condition worsens. She starts to shiver. She struggles to get up to drink water and drops the glass. The sound of glass breaking echoes in the silence. A minute later, Minu appears in the doorway. He's wearing casual pants and a t-shirt, no jacket. He looks at the broken glass, at her. Go back to bed, he says, not sternly, but firmly. He quickly cleans up the broken glass, brings a new glass of water, and sets it next to the bed. Drink, small sips. He doesn't touch her. He doesn't feel her forehead, but he stands next to her until she finishes drinking. His presence isn't gentle, but it's there, tangible, unexpected. Thank you, she says quietly. You're welcome. Just follow the doctor's orders, he replies and leaves, leaving the door ajar. In the morning, she wakes up to the sound of his voice in the living room. He's on the phone, canceling his meetings for the day. Yes, a family emergency. Reschedule everything. Chung-hee lies there, staring at the ceiling. He stays, not out of concern, of course, out of responsibility, because she's now his liability, an asset that's broken and needs to be looked after to preserve his investment. But somehow, this cold, pragmatic concern feels more real to her at this moment than any beautiful but empty gift. He's here. He's making sure she's okay. And for the first time in their strange coexistence, it doesn't feel like part of a deal. It feels simply like a presence. Chung-hee is recovering, but sleep hasn't fully returned. She wakes up at night with a dry mouth. She puts on a robe and goes to the kitchen for water. In the kitchen, only a dim light is on above the stove. Minu stands by the window, his back to the room, looking out at the city at night. He, too, is wearing casual clothes. A steaming mug sits on the table in front of him. He turns at her footsteps. He nods. "Can't sleep?" he asks quietly. "Thirst," she replies just as quietly, and goes to the refrigerator. "There's tea in the teapot if you want. Herbal. I just brewed it." She's a little surprised. She pours herself some water, but then decides to follow his advice and pours tea from the ceramic teapot on the table. The scent of mint and chamomile softly permeates the kitchen. She sits down on a high chair near the island, a respectful distance away. The silence isn't oppressive. It's filled with the hum of the sleeping city outside the window. "You're not sleeping either," she notes. "Lots of thoughts," he replies shortly, taking a sip from his mug. He doesn't leave. He stands, leaning against the counter. "Workers?" "And more." A pause. She tastes the tea carefully. "It's good. Thanks for staying then." "When I was sick," she says, looking into her mug. "It was necessary," he says, but then adds, his tone softening slightly, "But I'm glad you're better." Another pause, but this time lighter. "I was surprised then," she admits. "I thought you were going away on business." "Business isn't going anywhere, and if something happened to you, it would create more problems." He explains his logic. Pragmatic, as always, but now it sounds less cold than before. "Still, thank you," she repeats. He nods again, accepting her gratitude as fact. "And you?" he asks unexpectedly. "Have you been drawing for a long time?" The question catches her off. Guard! He's never asked anything personal about her. "Yes, since childhood. It has always helped me calm down." "It's obvious," he says. "In your room. There's order there. A system." He noticed. Had he been there? Or had he just seen her through the open door? The simple fact that he'd noticed something about her fills her with a strange warmth. "Yeah, I guess," she says. "What helps you? Calm down?" He thinks, looks into his mug. "Work," he says finally, "and silence." She understands. His world is one of silence and control, and her presence, as long as she follows the rules, doesn't disturb that silence. Perhaps even complements it. They finish their tea in silence, but no longer like two strangers, but like two people who share the same night space, the same moment of peace. The next morning, after Minwoo has already left, Chung-hee decides to return the book she took from the living room a couple of days ago. It's a thick tome on architecture, and it was lying on the coffee table. She notices a corner of some paper sticking out from between the pages. She opens the book to that page. It's not a bookmark. It's a photograph, worn around the edges, the colors slightly faded. The photograph shows a teenager, about 16 years old. He stands against the backdrop of an ordinary city park, wearing a simple dark jacket and jeans. He's smiling, widely, sincerely, with a slight awkwardness. His eyes are bright, lively, full of a kind of naive energy. In one hand, he holds a book. In the other, a glass of some kind of drink. This isn't Minu, or rather, these are his features, his face, but this is a completely different person. Someone who hasn't yet been forged in the icy fire of responsibility and power. Someone who knew how to simply smile. Chung-hee stares at the photograph for a long time. She struggles to reconcile this open boy with the withdrawn, rigid man she lives. That evening, Minu, as usual, goes into the living room to get the newspaper. His gaze falls on an open book. He freezes. He sees a photograph. Chung-hee watches from the hallway, pretending to straighten a vase on the shelf. She sees his shoulders tense. He slowly takes the photograph. He doesn't look at it for long. He just stares. His face is expressionless. It becomes even more closed off than usual. He puts the photograph back and closes the book. Then he looks up. His gaze meets hers. He understands what she saw. He says nothing. He picks up the newspaper and heads towards his office. "Minwoo," Chung-hee calls him quietly. He stops but doesn't turn around. "What were you like when you were young?" she asks, not as an interrogation, but with genuine, cautious curiosity. He turns. His eyes are dark, impenetrable. "Different," he says, one word. His voice is low and flat, as if covering the topic. "What?" "It doesn't matter, Chung-hee," he interrupts, and his tone is not rude, but final. "That person no longer exists. They're gone. There is only the one who is here." He looks at her, and there's a warning in his gaze. Not a threat, but a clear boundary. This topic is closed. This door is locked forever. "I see," she says quietly. "Sorry?" He gives a curt nod, turns, and walks into the office. The door closes with a quiet but distinct click. Chung-hee is left alone. She looks at the closed book. She saw a crack in his armor, just for a moment. She saw the ghost of that boy. And he made it clear to her that ghosts were not welcome here, that in this house, In his life, there was room only for the present, for facts, for a contract. She strokes the book cover and goes to her room. She has even more questions, and the understanding that she won't get answers. Soyeon reports that gossip columns have reported that the newlyweds Kang are rarely seen together in public. Minwoo decides to fix this with a simple solution. "We're going to the movies tonight," he announces over breakfast. It's not a proposal, it's a plan. "A movie?" Chung-hee asks. "Yes, the big theater downtown. The right people go there. We should be seen together in a casual setting, like a normal couple." They go out in the evening. Chung-hee is wearing elegant trousers and a sweater. Minwoo is wearing a dark coat and jeans. He even pretended to choose a movie. Although Chung-hee, I'm sure his choice fell on the highest grossing and neutral blockbuster. He buys tickets, popcorn, and 2 drinks. It all feels unnaturally right. He holds the popcorn within easy reach, his movements next to her protective, but not intimate. They sit in the middle of the room. Indeed, there's a couple from that same circle nearby. The man recognizes Mina, and they exchange nods. During the film, they sit without touching. Chung-hee occasionally catches a glimpse of the screen's light reflecting off his motionless face. He's not watching the film, he's observing the audience, assessing the atmosphere. This isn't relaxation, it's work. After the session, they go out into the foyer. "Wait here. I'll go to the men's room," he says, and leaves. Chung-hee stands by the column, looking at posters for other films. A group of noisy young people emerges from the bar in the foyer. One of them, clearly drunk, staggers, and almost bumps into her. "Oh, sorry, beautiful," he says loudly, and his gaze lingers on her. He looks around. Her companion is gone. His friends shout something after him. "Bored alone? Maybe you'd like to join us?" He takes a step closer, smelling of alcohol and sweat. Chung-hee backs away. "No thanks. I'm waiting for my husband." "Husband?" the guy snorts. "Where is he, this husband? I can't see him. Come with us, it'll be more fun." He reaches out to grab her elbow. Chung-hee instinctively pulls her hand away, her heart pounding. At that moment, Minwoo approaches the drunk man from behind. He approached so quietly that no one noticed. His hand lands on the man's shoulder, not like a slap, but with a heavy, stabilizing pressure that instantly stops him in his tracks. "Do you have a problem with my wife?" Minwoo asks. His voice is quiet, even, but it cuts through the noise of the foyer like a blade. The boy turns, ready to snap, but meets his gaze, and freezes. It's not the look of an angry husband. It's the look of a predator who has already assessed the threat and calculated all options for eliminating it. There's no screaming, not even anger in that look, only absolute, chilling confidence and a readiness for action. Minwoo's body is not tense. It's collected, like a spring. The boy's friends, sensing something is wrong, fall silent. One of them, more sober, quickly approaches. "Sorry, he's not himself. We'll take him," he mutters, avoiding looking at Mina. The drunk guy, still under Minwoo's heavy hand, tries to mumble something, but his friend yanks him sharply by the jacket. "Sorry," the sober guy says again, practically dragging his friend away. The group quickly disperses. The whole incident took no more than a minute. "She's not afraid of that drunk. She's afraid of him. Shouldn't have happened. You were just protecting appearances," she says, trying to bring everything back within the bounds of their agreement. He turns around. He looks at her. There's no playfulness in his gaze. "No," he says clearly. "That would be bad for appearances. A scandal. I acted to avoid a scandal." He goes back to his office. But this time the door doesn't close tightly. Chung-hee stands in the hallway. Fear slowly recedes, leaving behind a strange, prickly curiosity. She saw him without his mask. Not the boy in the photograph, but the man he had become. Tough, fast, dangerous. The man he had been on that street. But at that moment at the cinema, it was meant to protect. And strangely, that same fear piqued her interest. Who was he really? Where was the line between role and essence? And why, having seen this essence, did she feel not only fear, but also relief? As if she'd finally seen the true outline of the rock she'd been leaning against in the fog all this time. At first, it happens once a week, without warning. Chung-hee hears the elevator door open in the middle of the day, and after a while, Minwoo appears in the kitchen. He doesn't say, "I'll have lunch at home." He just shows up. He silently makes himself something simple. Instant noodles, reheats leftovers from last night's dinner, makes a sandwich. He eats standing at the counter, scrolling through his phone. His presence doesn't require conversation. It simply takes up space. Chung-hee continues to eat lunch in her room at first. Then, one day, she goes into the kitchen for tea. He nods. She sits down on a high stool on the other side of the island with her salad. "Working at the office?" she asks politely. "It's quiet," he replies curtly. No more words, but no awkwardness either. They simply eat, each at their own pace, in the same room. Gradually, these dinners become more frequent. He starts saying sometimes, "Order something for lunch, for two," or "The cook will be here at 2. It doesn't become a rule. It's simply a new, unspoken opportunity. Sometimes, over lunch, he'll discuss neutral topics. Art news, he knows she's following it. An upcoming event. His questions become a little more personal. "Did you finish that still life?" Or, "Did mom call?" Chung-hee answers, reservedly at first, then, more freely. She occasionally begins to ask in response, "Have the negotiations with the Japanese concluded?" He answers in generalities, but doesn't deviate from the topic. Lunch ceases to be a necessity. It becomes a period in the day, a silent truce, and then something more, a habit of shared presence. One day, when Manu comes to lunch, he notices sheets of paper spread out on the table by the window. These aren't just sketches. They're detailed, vivid drawings of the view from the window, a tree branch in a vase, even an intricate architectural element of their living room ceiling. They're executed with a confident hand, with an understanding of light and shadow. He doesn't comment on it out loud. He just stares longer than usual. A few days later, So-yeon brings not only the usual documents, but also several heavy boxes. "These are for you, Miss Kang," she says neutrally. The boxes contain more than just basic paints and paper. They're also professional supplies, expensive pigments, sets of sable brushes in various sizes, rare pastels, watercolor, and graphic paper blocks, and a sketch pad. Everything Chung-hee could only dream of, but hadn't included in her lists, considering it unnecessary. No note, no explanation, just the fact. These materials are now here. Chung-hee understands. This is him. This is a response to what he saw. Not a compliment, not a gift for show like earrings. This is a provision of resources, recognition of her skill in action, not in words. The language he understands best is the language of action. She doesn't thank him directly, but the next time he comes for lunch, she leaves a finished drawing on the table, a quick but expressive sketch of a coffee cup sitting by the window. His cup. He sees it. He picks it up, examines it. He nods, puts it back. He says nothing, but the next time, his answer is already on the table. Not a drawing, but an old, rare book on old master techniques, which he must have gotten hold of somewhere. He simply places it next to her plate. An invitation arrives for a family dinner at Min's parents' place to celebrate his father's birthday. Everything must be perfect, but Chung-hee is nervous. Sumi's pressure and constant judgmental glances make her tense. While serving soup, she absent-mindedly passes the cup to her mother-in-law with one hand, even turning the cup so the handle points the wrong way. In Korean etiquette, this is a slight faux pas, a sign of inattention. Sumi freezes. Her eyebrows rise slightly. Minwoo's father clears his throat. A chilly pause hangs in the air. Chung-hee feels the blood drain from her face. She's made a stupid, childish mistake. Minu, sitting across from him, doesn't change expression. He calmly picks up his cup of soup and takes a sip. "And then he dropped the cake," her father adds, a rare note of warmth in his voice. "Exactly," Minwoo nods. "Etiquette is something you learn. The main thing is sincerity of intentions." He looks at Chung-hee, and his gaze isn't judgmental. It's neutral, even supportive. Chung-hee tries very hard, and that's more important to me. He didn't make excuses for her or demean himself. He simply shifted the blame, gently reminding his parents of their own humanity and downplaying the significance of their mistake. He protected her, not as an asset but as his own. Sumi softens, pretending the mistake is unimportant. The conversation continues, but Chung-hee can't hear the words anymore. She feels only heat in her cheeks and a strange, constricting feeling in her chest. He took her side, just like that. After dinner, on the way home, there's silence in the car, but not awkward, rich. As the elevator takes them to their floor, Chung-hee, without looking at him, says quietly, "Thank you for being there." He's silent for a few seconds as he steps out of the elevator. "You're welcome," he says finally. They sometimes forget that not everyone grew up with the same rules. "No," she insists, pausing in the hallway. "Thank you. You could have not done that." He turns to face her. They stand in the dim hallway, illuminated only by the light from the living room. "You're my wife," he says simply. And there's no longer any reference to a contract or pretense in these words. There's simply a statement of a new established fact. That means you're under my protection. That includes things like this. He doesn't say, "because I love you," or "because you're dear to me." He speaks of protection as a principle, a duty that has grown out of their situation. But for him, a man of principle and duty, this is perhaps more than any declaration of affection. She looks at him, and the words stick in her throat. Thank you is no longer enough, and she can't say more. She has no right. He looks back at her, and something flickers in his usually impenetrable gaze, a reflection of her own unspokenness. It's as if he's waiting for something he can't say himself, and he knows she won't say it either. He simply nods, sharply, and goes into his office. But the door remains open, so Yan reports that they're under scene again. Min-woo chooses the theater, not a trendy premiere, but a classical play in a chamber theater. They sit in the dark. A drama about love and duty plays out on stage. Chung-hee immersed in the action. Minu sits motionless, but she senses that he is not following the scene as closely. At the climax, when the heroine delivers a quiet monologue about her choice on stage, Chung-hee involuntarily shudders with tension. Her hand, resting on the armrest, slips and meets his hand. He doesn't pull away. She too freezes. In the darkness, under someone else's words about impossible love, their fingers lie next to each other, the backs of their hands palm to palm, separated only by the thin layer of fabric of his jacket and the silk of her dress. The warmth of his skin penetrates the fabric. No one moves. No one looks at each other. They both look at the stage, but they don't see it. The whole world has narrowed to this point of contact, accidental, and at the same time inevitable. They sit like that until the end of the act. When the lights come up for intermission, they simultaneously, as if on cue, remove their hands. They stand up. They walk into the foyer. Not a word, but something broke, or on the contrary, fell into place. After that evening at the theater, something new crept into their rhythm. One evening, Min-woo, walking through the living room where Chung-hee was watching a TV series on her tablet, stopped. "What's this?" he asked, without much interest. "A drama, about doctors. Nothing special," she replied. He stood for a minute, then sat down in the chair opposite the sofa, at a respectful distance. He didn't say, "Can I join you?" He simply sat. They watched the rest of the episode in silence. When the credits rolled, he stood up and left. Not a word. The next evening, around the same time, he came out into the living room again. She was already waiting, without turning on the television. "Shall we continue?" she asked. He nodded, so it became a habit. After dinner, if he has no urgent matters, he comes into the living room. They watch an episode or two. Sometimes he comments on the character's logic from a cold, businesslike perspective. Sometimes she laughs at the absurdity of the plot. Sometimes they simply watch in silence. It's not romantic. It's not a date. It's simply spending time together, a way to break the silence that now seems too loud when they're in different rooms. They've created their own microclimate, their own truce zone, where the agreement has been tacitly renegotiated, but the new rules haven't yet been announced. One day at breakfast, Minu places not a newspaper, but a plain envelope on the table next to her plate. It's unmarked. "Open it," he says. Inside is a printed calendar, 1 year, from the date of their wedding. The entire year is lined up, with some dates marked: receptions, visits, interviews. The months fly by. And here's the last marked date: tomorrow, exactly 1 year. Below the calendar are 2 documents. The first, a draft separation agreement, the first step toward a quiet, civilized divorce. All the terms of their original agreement have been met. Her account has long since been replenished. Her reputation has been strengthened. Her parents are reassured. The second document, a preliminary application for the purchase of the neighboring property, penthouse in the same building, to expand the space. He says nothing. He simply lays the facts before her, just like that first night. The original agreement is over. It's time to either complete the deal or renegotiate it under new terms. But he doesn't offer new terms. He waits for her to make a move. Chung-hee looks at the papers, at the cold, clear language of legal terms in the first document, at the dry reference to adjacent property in the second. She thinks about the empty A penthouse that, over the course of a year, had filled not with things, but with habits, about quiet dinners shared, about the drawing materials he'd guessed right, about his hand protecting her from a drunken bully and from his mother's cold judgment, about his warmth in the darkness of the theater, about quiet evenings in front of the TV. She looks up at him. He looks at her. His face is still the same mask, but his eyes lack the usual icy depth. There's a question there, and anticipation, and perhaps a shadow of the same uncertainty that gripped her throat. He fulfilled his part of the bargain, and more. Now it's her turn. Win the bet or start a real game for which there are no rules. She slowly pushes both documents away from her. "I don't want to move," she says quietly, but clearly. "I like my office and the view from the window." He doesn't move. He doesn't smile, but something in his posture relaxes, as if an invisible weight has been lifted. We can keep the office, he says after a pause. His voice is low, even. But about the view, maybe we should think about a more spacious living room for watching TV shows. This isn't a confession. It's not a request to stay. This is his language. The language of actions, plans, the next step. He doesn't ask, "Are you staying?" He says, "Let's set up the living room." And she understands. The deal is over. Something else is beginning. What exactly, they don't yet know. But now they will figure it out together. Not as parties to a deal, but as two people who accidentally discovered that their loneliness ends more comfortably in each other's presence. She nods, picking up a dropped napkin from the floor to hide the trembling in her hands, and the slight, almost imperceptible smile that has nevertheless touched the corners of her lips. Yes, she agrees. The living room needs reconsideration.